What if the true beginning of Rick and Morty Season 8 wasn't Episode 1, but Episode 2, Valkyrick? Now, this episode dives deep into Rick's psyche, offering kind of a blend of some action, emotion, and character development that sets the tone for the season. Kind of like what I expected from the first episode. So stick around as we dissect why this episode might just be the premiere we deserved. What's up, my know-it-alls? Well, today we're diving into Rick and Morty Season 8, Episode 2, Valkyrik. Oh my God. Let's break down why this episode stands out. And it really does stand out. This is your spoiler warning, by the way, but at the same time, I'm going to give you real quick a fast recap that before we get into any serious spoiler territories, I'll hit that spoiler alert as soon as we get there. So Valkyrik centers on Rick teaming up with Space Beth for high-stakes missions. Well, specifically, a high-stakes mission. The episode delves into their very complex father-daughter relationship, which, I mean, I guess wasn't that far away from that. And then, minor spoiler, you'd see Bird Person and his daughter in this one who make an appearance. And I'm here for that. I really am. All right. So now, did you like that? It's a good episode. Go watch it. I think you're going to have fun with it. All that having been said, let's spoil this bad boy. This is what I wanted. This is 100% what I wanted from the first episode. Why do I say that? Last episode felt like a retread of an awful lot of territory that we'd already been through, but more than that, it felt like it kind of rewound everybody's stuff.
Knock it off, Slow Mobius!
Sorry, dude! I'm just trying to show off my powers, bro!
Like all the character development we'd seen since season 6, really, felt like it was thrown out the window, and they were like, well, we're going to introduce and blah, 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 and you guys are going to start from scratch. Whatever. Rick's personal growth, though at first was somewhat, I don't want to say intimidating or even confusing, but it was definitely not the kind of thing we were expected or thought was going to be on our bingo card. So then they got us there. They got us there and began to show us a lot more of that kind of stuff. So ultimately, what I was expecting was a continuation of that concept, especially carried over from last season. There's two things at play here. The very first is obviously Space Beth's decision to contact her dad, and really looks torn up about it when she has to make that decision, which I found really amusing, to say the least. But then the way when she finally does call him, Rick's decision to help her, I believe we're starting to really see an empathetic side to Rick Sanchez. Whether that's a result of his final comeuppance on his nemesis, or the fact that there's been so much emotional growth to this point, and sort of things are the cost of those things are starting to stack up, especially when the one thing he wanted more than anything was to try to reestablish himself within a family setup. So, where do you ultimately go from there? I think his willingness to kind of confront past mistakes really shows a lot of character development, because that's something that old Rick would never have done. So how does Space Beth play into all of this? All right. I think Space Beth is one of the best versions of this kind of storyline that you could have, in that she's a unique character. She comes from a very unique place. She's a will they, won't they in physical living form, because she's the physical manifestation of all the things Beth wanted in her heart. Whether or not she's a clone, who knows? But ultimately, she comes out of this whole thing still a very strong and somewhat independent character. Very much often she challenges Rick.
You got me fired!
Only because you blew your chance to quit!
Oh my God. I really hope I am the clone, because I never asked to be born.
All the time. A lot of his decisions. I think their interactions really do highlight for me sort of the kind of unresolved tension that, but with mutual respect that they both have. I think that's for sure one of those aspects of the characters, the two of them, especially in this episode, that really works well. Now let's look at there's an interesting thing they do, and it's kind of just thrown in. Bird Person and Bird Daughter, they go with Beth and Rick on the mission that they've got to go on. And I found myself going, I'm sorry, wait, what? When did Bird Person come back? Oh, okay. So Rick just basically called the boys. Seriously, he basically did one of these And the boys were like, yo, 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 yo. And it just showed up. And I was like, okay. And it was good. It was good. It was good. You can't tell me that including Bird Person and Bird Daughter doesn't add some sort of emotional weight, especially because who Rick is and who Bird Person knows Rick to be. Because Bird Person peeped it first. He's been sort of on Rick about who Rick was becoming this whole time. But the fact that there's parallels, and it's not just fathers and daughters, the fact that both fathers feel like they have to make up for something, and the fact that both daughters could care less about their fathers. And I really want to ultimately move in that sort of direction. I think for a really good, this is a good Father's Day episode for this month as well. So call your fathers. There's family struggles, man, on both sides. Bird Person's parenting journey mirrors Rick's, so the challenges Rick's on, because Rick's not really parenting Beth anymore, Space Beth, but he's definitely trying to kind of rekindle or recoup or recover somehow that relationship. I don't know. It's like he can't stand that either of the Beths or either half of her, if she's a clone or whatever, hate him, because it means that no matter what road she went down, they were both going to hate him, and that's something I don't know he can deal with. Cisco's betrayal feels like, what is this? And the fact that Rick's trust, I mean, and as they're talking, he's just stacking on how much Cisco means to, how much he trusts him. And Beth's like, Space Beth's like, how did I not ever know about this person?
What does someone have to do to achieve the level of trust you place in this random man?
I trust plenty of people.
Name two.
Bird Person and Cisco.
Cisco's at the same level as Bird Person?
Yeah.
But ultimately that betrayal, the fact that it backfires and all the unexpected complications, that's just Rick Law. I say Rick Law because in my own house, I have Mr. Know-It-All Law, which is, it's like Murphy's Law, but worse because it only happens to me. So this is literally Rick Law at work. Okay. But the betrayal, it forces Rick to have to adapt and rely on others. We call that growth. Does Rick need to do that? Not really. Not the Rick Sanchez we know. He very much could go with the punches and then come out clean and be like, you know what? I'm just going to, that's it. Nuke everybody, be done with it. I'm out. Okay. He could have done that. He didn't. And that I think really showcases the character's, ultimately his personal growth. The episode, again, really, this one, and again, this is the kind of thing I wanted from the first episode. It's really a balancing act, as all Rick and Morty's often are. There's enough action. There's a lot of emotional depth. And then ultimately you get this really nice story that is very comprehensive in terms of in terms of the notes it's covering. I fully see the story circle at work in this episode. And that's a good thing. But let's talk about its placement as the second episode. I feel like had you started this one first, and then you go to the next episode, I feel like this would have been a great place, because we normally get the Sanchez family and their perspectives immediately. So seeing Space Beth first would have just made sense. And then you go to the Rick and Morty centered episode. And at that point, I'm kind of okay with the hiccup in logic. I came in expecting something. You didn't pay off on that something. And yes, I'm absolutely guilty of being you expected something and then you got disappointed because they didn't do the thing you invented in your head. Yes. Why? Because it broke the pattern that they'd established. Now, I don't mean that in a stereotypical, like, well, there's a pattern of writing and this is how they write things and blah, blah, blah. But there are rules for a reason. It's the way you do things. It was just jarring. Okay. It was just jarring. Especially because this episode being the first episode and then the previous episode being episode 2 would have actually worked thematically very well. I think if I'd have seen last week's episode second, I would have been much more forgiving, because they already would have established the various stakes in terms of the Rick's growth and that we are indeed continuing that universe of thought. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. But ultimately, there you go. Now you know. If you always have the battle, you're halfway being know-it-all yourself. What's it all index rating for this episode, the second episode of Rick and Morty, Valkyrick? I'm going to give this episode an 8 out of 10.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Please don't fuck my coworkers.
Hey, you called me.
Valkyrick masterfully blends action, emotion, character development, all the things that I wanted and that I want from Rick and Morty at this stage. They make it kind of a standout. This is sort of a standout episode that arguably, again, I think should have opened the season. Love the show. I'm glad that I'm glad that the first week was just kind of a stumble block, but ultimately kept moving forward. I'm all about it. I do take on the mentality that Victor DiGiovanni has, which is ultimately, I need to check my expectations at the door and enjoy each episode as it stands. And we'll go from there. So I am checking out the Venture Brothers as recommended. So hopefully when I'm done watching season 1, I will let you guys, I'll probably do like a retro review and let you guys know what my thoughts are and then continue forward because it's actually kind of good. All right, guys, I'll talk to you again real soon. Let me know what you think. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all. Bye.